he's like, he doesn't even get us,
He
man.
doesn't even get us, man. Well, I know this is...
That's some hot ass tea. Holy
You're drinking tea?
Hot
You
tea.
got some Earl Grey? You got some...
Nah, my stomach can't do the Earl Greys these days.
What? So
I do the stomach soothing herbals.
So you got some herbal tea. What do you got in there? Chamomile? You got
Peach and honey.
Peach and honey. Interesting. Well, I am sipping on some chocolate milk.
Ooh, chocolate milk.
Yeah, one of those nights. I know it. I don't know what to say. It's definitely something.
You know, it's something.
It's something. But yes, that is what I'm working with right now.
I like it. It's different. It's a different choice for fall, and I'm into this.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're now officially in fall, technically, yes?
Oh, yes. Yes.
What is time anymore? I don't know what time is.
Neither do I. It's a very...
Wait, we're actually in October now. We're in, like, not weird people doing horror stuff.
We're in actual... I mean...
We're in actual spooky season.
But you can do it. You can do it anytime you want.
You can do whatever you like. What is that song? No.
Yeah, no. I don't know.
That ain't making a cut.
I'm not hip. I never was hip. I can't be hip.
My hips hurt.
Sometimes wake up like that. Yeah. Lean back here. Oh.
Have you recently rewatched The Exorcist?
Recently, I would say maybe about a couple years ago. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is the first time I've watched it, probably not like at least a year and a half, 2 years.
Well, were you in
horror?
I'm trying to think in school. Were you in did you take the horror class? Were we?
Yes, I took horror. I don't think I took comedy.
Okay, so you watched it then too, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming he would always show it.
Well, it's interesting. It's been updated since then.
Mm-hmm.
Friedkin, R.I.P. We did lose him this last year, which is a bummer. But, I mean, a lot of directors update some of their best work every so often. I mean, this, given how much time it's been around, it's gone through. I've lost track of how many times they've updated it, but for the Blu-ray iteration, I know that they did a lot of CGI work for like little things, like there were scenes that they didn't include in the initial cut.
Yeah.
That because the crab walking down the stairs, they didn't include that because you could clearly see the strings, but when they were able
the
to
wireframe,
take them out, they decided to put it in, which I thought was interesting.
Which is interesting. Like, how were they? I guess they were just trying to then trying to cut around it. Like, if they were going to have that in originally, or at least the intention was always to have it in originally. How would they have? Would they have to do like some sort of a mat on it, or just shoot around it and cut around it then later on in editing?
Yeah, I think that they just, given that it was like a really compressed shooting environment, like on the set of stairs like that, they were limited in what they were able to do.
Well, and they actually shot this in an actual house, right? This isn't...
I think so. Well, it was interesting because they shot the bedroom out in multiple ways.
Okay.
So the bedroom was on a stage actually in the house, and I think that they shot two versions of it on a stage. But the main reason for shooting it on a stage was they refrigerated it for the cold.
It's interesting when you think about all the effects that, especially back in the 70s, would have been. Today, like, crap, you can do stuff on your phone and there it is.
Yeah.
So to do it in a more old-fashioned way, like actually refrigerating, I feel like today you could just put that in later on.
Yeah, it was like, what was it, Fight Club, where there's a really weird detail in the cold breath of Fight Club, and it's that it's the same computer graphics effects that were used on Leo in Titanic, because Fight Club's whole thing was they were like piecemealing different things from other movies, and they took a lot of things like that for that weird joke sake of it, and Leo DiCaprio's breath in the cave sequence of Fight Club is one of those things. It's so weird that they did that.
I never knew that.
Yeah, so when you see Ed Norton breathing in Fight Club, it's actually Leo's breath.
That's pretty sweet. I never knew that.
Yeah, there's a couple weird details like that. I don't remember a bunch off the top of my head, but yeah, on the topic of the day, we are talking William Friedkin's Exorcist today, 1973. On the cusp of David Gordon Green's Exorcist Believer coming out this week, which I'm interested to see what happens with that.
Yeah, you had said they had this this was the first time at Horror Nights they had it.
This was the first time at Universal's HHN that an IP house was there before the movie was released. And I don't know how to judge that house before having seen the movie, and I'm not sure I'm gonna know how to feel about this movie having seen that whole house. So it puts me in a very weird state.
Well, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, I feel like David Gordon Green, having had so many houses with HHN these past few years. I mean, he's had his whole run of Halloween and worked with them a few times. So I feel like Exorcist was always going to be in there. So
and this was 1973. This got released. I think you said that.
Yeah.
And I always forget that it's based on a novel from 1971.
Exactly.
With the same
and
name.
Also, interestingly enough, they had the author William Peter Blatty was in there working directly with William Friedkin.
Yeah,
well,
he is. I mean, he's at least credited as one of the screenwriters, I believe.
Yeah,
I can't remember
he
if
was
he's
in the
sole
writers' room.
screenwriter.
They were batting it back and forth, and I think it wasn't till the editing room that there was any kind of real differences in creative strife.
Yeah, that's interesting.
They had to. It was Friedkin wanted to cut. Not I want to say argued with, but I forget who of the crew pushed him to cut certain scenes out to trim it down. And he eventually, after laboring with the edit to debate that decision, he eventually did decide to cut those scenes out. And that was when he had a lot of back and forth with the author who didn't think that those scenes should be cut. And that's where it kind of got a little hairy. But all in all, it did prove to be one of the most successful horror movies of all time.
No.
So
well,
let's
let's.
No, I was just gonna say I think the hatchet was somewhat buried on that front.
Yeah. No, and that's good. Well, I was going to say, for those who have never seen it, the story, the film, The Exorcist, revolves around the possession of a young girl named, Reagan? Reagan, right?
Yeah, Reagan.
Played by Linda Blair.
Beautifully played by Linda Blair.
Yeah.
She played both sides of that coin very, very perfectly.
And it's pretty much essentially the process or the journey to try to expel the demonic entity that has taken her over.
Well, also even just to diagnose it, and through those early scenes where they're just trying to figure out what the hell is really wrong with her.
Yeah. No, this is one movie still scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. And on that front, I wanted to say I've heard people say that it's not scary anymore. And to that, I say on the basis of religion and its ties, its unquestionable ties to religion. And, a lot of people will say that because typically fans of horror are not as into religion, that it's not as scary as it used to be. But to that, I say it really comes down to what you believe, at least on the front of possession. I mean, if you think that that's even possible, or if there's even any arena in which that's a possibility, I think is where this movie still has life.
Well, yeah, and something this a little bit off topic here that brings up an interesting point. Let me do my no. Work with me, computer.
Your computer is possessed.
Yeah, by don't cut that out.
Cut that.
One thing that I like that's interesting too when you were talking about possession, even if you come at it from a scientific or medical standpoint, even just as emotions, our emotions can possess us.
Yeah.
Heavily, as it's part of being human. And one of my favorite books that I read in college, it's called Of Love and Other Demons. It's a novel, by a Colombian writer, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I think I pronounced that correctly. It was published in 1994. Essentially, I don't want to give it away, but one of the themes of the story, and there's no the supernatural element in it, if it is there, is much more subdued than in The Exorcist.
Yeah.
But this one is focusing on sort of poses the question that is love. The concept of it is that in its right a demon, an entity, because it can make you do terrible things. It's kind of essentially what the test that is happening in The Exorcist, this novel is doing it the same way, just kind of doing it in a more realistic approach. There's not really an exorcism or anything like that, but it's the possession of an emotion that can come over you. And in this case of the novel, it's love. So I always found that because I read this and then it was the same year we had the horror class and then we went to go watch Exorcist. So it was just perfect timing. We're reading this story, we're watching The Exorcist. They both take a very similar approach with themes and character journeys and the struggles and the conflict, but just how they approach it is a little bit different. But I always found that if you have never read it, I highly recommend it as well.
What's the title again?
Of Love and Other Demons.
Love and Other Demons.
Yeah,
Interesting.
definitely an interesting story.
Putting that one on my list for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely out there, and I think it makes me think I think it's a similar theme going on with it, just not as the spectacle, if you will, is much more subdued.
Well, even just like the cast of actors that we get in this movie.
Oh yeah,
it's often referred to as the Godfather, quote unquote, of the horror genre. I think more so than anything else I can think of, I think it's deserving of that title.
Oh no, this is one, and like I said, even though it scares the shit out of me, still, and I know some people can say, oh, it's not as scary anymore. Maybe that's just because we're now so overexposed to different things.
It's kind of like that debate I hear about Blade Runner saying that Blade Runner 2049 blows it out of the water.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with how many years, 40 some years of progressing the art of filmmaking. Of course it's going to, and you get one of the most A-list directors currently working. Of course it's going to quote unquote best in some categories, but you do have to respect the original for blazing the trail.
Oh, no, definitely.
Starting some of those trends.
Oh, no, definitely. And that's,
so, you know, for however you feel about The Exorcist, it was very early on in the horror, in a lot of these tropes of the horror genre to create some of these things that are now commonly known about storytelling, which is interesting.
Yeah. And I was just going to say before, just so the thought doesn't escape me, this is one of the few films that I put the term masterpiece in front of for me, even though I can't really watch it all the time. But I do think just everything, the writing, the acting, the lighting, the cinematography, the sound, you name it, I feel like every element comes together. The makeup, the production design, everything all came together and made a masterpiece. I feel like that, for me, that's what a masterpiece is.
No, I agree. And as honest to God, as masterful as it is, what I find interesting is it's not one I want to pick up every year.
Yeah.
It's one that I kind of want to come back to every so often and let it really stew. And I feel like it hits harder when I'm not as freshened on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you can somehow find to watch this with a proper sound system, I say definitely do it. I don't know if I'm sure there are places that smaller theaters or anything that.
Well, this is one of those movies, you know, we talked with Christina about ideal sound mixes. I think that this is one of those movies.
Yeah, I would agree. Yes.
I was watching a bit with Friedkin talking about behind the scenes about the edit process, and he was talking about the mix, and he said that once they got it into some of the higher res formats, that he was able to hear things in the sound mix when just watching it back for the remaster process. That he heard things in the mix that he had never heard before, and I was like, I believe it, because his mix is crazy. It's so deep. There's so much going on in it.
I mean, to have received, I didn't realize it got 10 Academy Award nominations that year.
Yeah,
including Best Picture. Still one of the I still think one of the few and rare horror, like definitive horror stories that actually got at least the Best Picture nod.
Yeah, it's very rare, very, very rare, because horror is honestly kind of looked down upon in the industry, at least I
would say so too. Yeah. Well, and you think too, like, did it get that because at the time it was controversial?
Yeah, there was big controversy over this one, wasn't there?
Yeah. I mean, you look at just the sheer, just the grotesque, the profanity, the images. I'm
sure the church wasn't very happy.
No, probably not. It's definitely one of those. Well, I can remember in film school, and I think maybe it was the same for you when you did the history of cinema when you come in freshman year. And this definitely sticks with me. Our professor, and correct me on anything that I say that might be wrong, he showed us a clip of The Sound of Music, like one of the opening shots with Julie Andrews and The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music, which is 1966, 65, something like that. And then the next shot he shows us is a clip from The Exorcist. And it's the one, I believe it's the scene of her turning her head around, complete 180. I believe that was the scene. It's definitely one of the more violent scenes in the movie. And it was to drive a point home. He was like, essentially he was saying, do you think there was some sort of a cultural shift somewhere between 1965, 66 and 1973? Do you think like something took place to see what was one of the top movies at the time with Sound of Music, and then 6, 7, 8 years later you have one of the top movies with The Exorcist? It
is an interesting shift, and I mean, I think that's indicative of the times. I mean, there you look at what happened through the 70s. I mean, there were major cultural shifts happening between 69 and 75, even just through the course of the Vietnam War. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a lot changing in even just popular culture.
No, and I think it's what's still so lasting about it. I think it's definitely one of the movies that has become either known for those who have watched it or has entered the pop culture and is now known for it has become known for the lexicon-like moments that it created. You know,
Yeah,
like I mean, how
it's
many?
known for the bits and the iconic imagery, the snippets of it. I think the longer form storytelling of it is very lost in some of what's commonly known about it. I think it's a very slow burn of a movie, and I think that's why it's often cast aside as just it's not that great. But I think that nature of it gives it a lot of weight because it feels very natural, because it feels it's more believable to me in the ways that it is more of a slow burn.
Yeah. No, and I'm always a fan of more slow burn stories. And it's interesting too, because maybe from an editing standpoint, I've always noticed this is definitely a movie that gives you the time to breathe when you need it and then doesn't, or gives you the time to breathe when you want it or when you need it and then doesn't when you, what the hell am I saying right now?
I believe that you know what you're trying to say.
Let me put it this way. The moments that it needs to be that slow burn and when the audience needs to take a breath, it allows that to happen. When you are, because you get that sense, you're able to actually feel the emotions in the story. And then when it's time to be faster paced and not give you the chance to really fully be hit, it does that. The frenetic pace of it, the scenes, the one that always comes to my mind is the bed shaking scene. That one is one of the most disturbing ones to me. I don't know why. Like,
it's also one of the early instances of visual representation of her being possessed. It's what kicks off the whole doctor craze of trying to figure out what's wrong with her.
And that's definitely, I think, something that when compared to like today, I think the editing, it's another movie that I don't notice the editing as much. The editing kind of just disappears, and that is one of the biggest compliments I can give.
Well, speaking on the front of editing, what I thought was interesting was in the later rehashes of the edit and the remasters, with Friedkin adding things, he added a lot of subliminal cuts, like single frames of images and stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting, like interesting choices. I wonder why that stuff wasn't included originally, but it's interesting to see how these things evolve.
Well, no, yeah. And I didn't realize, honestly, one of my favorite scenes is the scene where Max von Sydow and Jason Miller, Father Marin and Father Karras, are sitting on the staircase.
Yeah.
And I mean, and he says, why this girl? Why here? I mean, and essentially, I know that's like literally hitting on the nose. I kind of understand why they cut it out originally.
Yeah.
But I also can understand why William Peter Blatty would want it back in so badly, because it is the heart of the story.
Yeah.
And as someone who enjoys writing more, I am glad that it is back in, though I can also see why it would have been taken out in the first place.
Yeah. It does make sense, but it is interesting that Max von Sydow was tapped to be in this also. I mean, his career lasted so long. I mean, I know they aged him up for this role too, which I also thought was a little interesting. I mean, he
probably more well known now for his role in Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Maybe.
Yeah. Also, he was in Minority Report.
Yeah.
And going way back to the earliest part of his career, he was in Seventh Seal, which is one of my all-time faves.
Yes.
So he's just one of those ones that's kind of always been around, and he's had a very interesting and fascinating.
Definitely too. Like, he's definitely one of those actors where his voice alone was.
Yeah, he has a very
it's very unique in the sense, like, it's one of those where like he could be both an on-screen actor and a voice actor.
Yeah,
there's like a classical like tone to it.
Also, Ellen Burstyn in this. If there's one thing I'm interested to see from David Gordon Green's take, is her return.
Oh, she's actually in?
Yeah, she's in it. She's reprising her role.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she's still kicking. She's had some great roles even in recent years. I mean, not all that long ago she did Interstellar. She's still kicking around.
Oh, all right. Well, good for her. Good for her.
Yeah, she's great. I do really enjoy her.
So what do you think is one of my favorite scenes too in the movie is that opening sequence at the archaeological dig.
Yeah, and I think that scene gets overlooked a lot.
Well, I would obviously we've talked about it more times than we can count now already, but obviously Raiders, like there's the dig site. Mm-hmm. This is one that I think even rivals that, if not surpasses it, because of just, I go to the sound in this one. I feel like this is the sound in this movie is one of the best I ever witnessed.
Definitely from the 70s, I would say.
Yeah.
But all time for sure. The scenes that impacted too going forward. I mean, you look at movies like Keanu Reeves and Constantine.
Mm-hmm.
There's definite influence in Constantine from The Exorcist.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, this is the Godfather or the cornerstone, I think, of certainly modern horror.
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, obviously this came out in the 70s, and by that time filmmaking and just horror in general had been around for a while. So, but I mean, there's so many movies now that I feel like you can trace back to this film.
Well, even just like the practical effects work in it kind of turned a lot of people's heads. And still do.
No pun,
I mean,
no pun intended.
I didn't even mean to do that. That's pretty great.
Didn't? Oh, I thought you did.
I did not mean to do that. That's really great.
You son of a bitch.
Now, give me a second because that's what's really good. Yeah, I mean, the wire work clearly, like we stated, the building the bedroom set on a stage for the refrigerator, like some pretty next level stuff for obviously not having the crutch of CGI in the 70s.
Well, yeah, I mean that alone. I mean, I guess I'm not sure, but I would guess as an actor that would at least help get into the role. Like at least, wow, I can actually feel.
It's like we talked about with Dylan when we had him on. I mean, it's just the more you can put an actor in that environment, the better off you're going to be. And I mean, there's no better example. I mean, they fully put their talent in the environment with that one.
Yeah, and it's always funny because usually, not all the time, but I can think of movies where when you're shooting like a snow scene, it's usually on stage, and it's usually room temperature or warm.
Yeah.
So because like it's all fake snow, there's no reason for it to be cold out. And now, of course, you can just do it all in the computer. So to do that, like to say, yeah, we're going to refrigerate this whole place. We're going to do it in a freezer, essentially. Like, all right.
Well, also, I think from that standpoint, you're going to want these actors to realistically react to being in a cool environment like that. I mean, to just do CGI for that is a way to do it, but it's going to rely more on those actors to sell that. The more you can make it a reality and for them to do their work, I mean, you're going to get better results out of the back end of that.
And I also, I always liked that little touch about it. The fact that as the possession becomes more and more dire, the situation becomes more and more dire, her room gets colder. Sort of, I don't know if this is a nod to the Inferno, but I always took it as such. Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
The deepest circles of hell are actually freezing cold. It's not fire or anything. It's absolute freezing cold down there. So I always took that as a very interesting
detail. I'd not heard that one before. But
yeah. When Dante goes through the ninth circle and comes face to face with Satan, it's in like a giant frozen lake. It's so cold. Everything there is frozen, like salt, like absolute zero. And Satan is like this monstrous being, like out of Lord of the Rings type thing, and he's stuck in the ice. And he tries to get free, but the more he tries, the more he's imprisoned by his own devices. Essentially, is what the whole thing of the whole theme of that story is getting at. But yeah, that's one of the interesting things I think people forget about the Inferno is the final circle is freezing cold. You can barely withstand it. So I always took that little detail in Exorcist to sort of be nodding to that, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah. Now he's a bit of a more controversial figure these days, but have you ever seen the movie The Ninth Gate?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah, Roman Polanski movie, and Roman Polanski is not very kindly looked upon these days for justifiable reasons. I'll let you all look into that on your own.
Yeah.
I do find that movie to be very interesting in how it deals with the nine of hell.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen that one in a bit, but yes. Johnny Depp's in that, right?
Yeah. He plays the book detective.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, good one. I do like that one, but obviously not a good time for Roman Polanski.
Yeah. No, certainly not. So what do you? I meant to ask it before. So what to you is probably, for me, I've said it's the storytelling and the sound. If I had to pick two things that just I always go to with this movie, what for you? Is there one particular thing? Is it the cinematography that you appreciate the most?
I think for me, there's several things, but I think the things that stand out for me the most are the performances.
Yeah.
Max von Sydow, Ellen Burstyn, and from the young girl Reagan. I mean, alone those ones stand out. But on top of that, like you said, the sound. But I think the direct collaboration with Friedkin and the author, William Peter Blatty, writing room. I mean, to have access to the mind of the man who actually came up with the ideas in the book, I think is a very important resource. And I think having him directly collaborate throughout the course of the film was an invaluable resource. I think that they got a lot from page to screen in a way that often doesn't happen. And I think that that's part of why this movie is as special as it is.
No, I definitely would agree with that. And I just got to ask a very off-topic question. Well, I guess it's not off-topic.
Sure.
Is it Saito? Is that how you say his last name?
I've always heard it Max von Sydow.
Okay. But, have I been pronouncing it wrong all these years?
I mean, it's possible. I don't know.
Oh,
that's how I've always heard it. So I tend to just go by what I've heard.
Okay. Well, what an interesting thing, too, that I've always thought, I never read the book. I don't know if this is in the book. But there is no father figure.
Yeah, I've always found that interesting, too.
Like you never find, like her actual biological father is never present.
It's definitely not stated in the film, but I don't think that it's stated in the book either.
And I've always found that kind of interesting. It's one of those, it's like character's not even there in any way. I think the only thing that you're supposed to allude or get from the movie is, I believe, someone calls in the very beginning, and I think the mother is speaking. Like, I think Reagan is sleeping at the time or something, or she's off doing something else, and you don't know who she's talking to on the other end, but I guess you're meant to assume that it's the father. If so, there's that one, I think that there's only one scene, I think, where she's on the phone, if I can recall correctly. And I've always found that to be very small detail, but looms large, I think, over it, because it's like, where is, like, why no father? I would be interested to know why not have a father figure, the actual biological father, because if we compare this to Poltergeist, the father plays a huge role in the story, and this has
there's
a similar
large trope.
Setting.
It's very common in horror, especially more towards after this period of the 70s, but it's very common in horror to have very strong female characters.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the great examples of that in Ellen Burstyn's character.
Oh, yeah.
Because her whole world lies in her daughter. And when that is threatened and attacked, her whole world comes crashing down. And I think a lot of that sells in Ellen Burstyn's performance. Part of why I said earlier that a lot of this movie's success lies in its performances. I think that seeing the terror, a lot of that comes out just mainly through her character and how she portrays.
Yeah, no, there's something about 70s horror that for me hits a little differently than modern horror. I don't know if it's like, sometimes the color grading is a little different in 70s movies.
Well, yeah, it has been touched up in years since, but I don't think that they've done anything that's really taken away. Because I've seen some remasters that you're like, I kind of wish they'd not done that. But in rewatching it, I took special note of like, okay, what did they do differently from The Last Prince? And I was trying to like kind of go back through, but it's been done so many times that it was a bit difficult to pinpoint all that down. But for the most part, it was how I remember the film looking visually anyway.
There's almost like I don't want to use the term gloss, but I'm going to. Over it, it's very hard for me to describe. And this, I think, goes to a lot of decades. Like, it's amazing how, like, when you watch a movie, you can look at it and be like, yeah, that's from the 80s, that's from the 90s, the 60s, whatever. And there are
I think
times
a lot of that's technicals. A lot of it is remembering. I have a bit of a timeline in my head ground out for what comes when, but I do think that you can, like, certain trends in cinematography, certain trends in editing, you can kind of pinpoint and remember when it came out.
And let's of course not forget the classic score. You hear it all the time in like haunted houses and like hay rides and parks now. I don't even know what the theme of it. Yeah, what's it called?
Yeah. I'm not sure what you're getting at, so I don't know.
The piano theme.
Oh, like you mean Tubular Bells?
Yes, Tubular Bells. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I thought that of course they were going to, but I thought it was interesting that they're bringing that back for Exorcist Believer. I mean, it's part of the iconography of the movie.
Yeah,
what it's known for, but that not to sidetrack either. But I mean, that house was interesting. I'm not quite sure how to feel about it. Still kind of mulling that one over.
Oh, about the one in Halloween Horror Nights?
Yeah, because like I said, I mean, it's based off of a movie I haven't seen, so it's a little difficult.
So, like, were you confused with that one then? Because you just didn't have a reference point?
Well, I wouldn't say confused, but it was like, picture it this way. It's like rushing through watching a movie in 15 minutes that you haven't seen. So it's like, it's far easier once you have a baseline of understanding of what the story is. Mm-hmm. But also from that token, I don't feel like I had much spoiled for me either.
Okay. All right. I really do like this like image that you have in the outline.
That was
is that like one of the original posters, or?
I think so, but it's been touched up.
Okay.
I think it's like a Procreate painting or something someone did off of that poster. But yes, I've seen it a number of times since, and I don't think that this was necessarily an original release poster, but I do think like the style of it and that definitely the typeface were part of an original.
Yeah. Speaking of posters, I see that you have.
Yes, I prepared for my Halloween in decorating, and part of that.
And I didn't. Is that what you're insinuating here with
No,
this?
I'm definitely not.
You got a prescription for that?
Throwing shade. Yeah, where is it?
Where?
No, yeah. In prep for the spookiest of seasons, I ditched my wall art, some of my wall art, and I replaced it with a placard I have for The Exorcist that I got a few years ago.
Well, I do. That one's. I like that one too. Well, take me through. Okay, so what didn't we touch on?
Just the iconic nature of some of the shots. Everybody knows that shot of Max von Sydow walking up under the lamplight. I mean, it's one of the most iconic shots in horror.
Yeah. Well, that pulls a lot.
The lighting of that shot.
That pulls a lot from going back to the Universal monster movies. I feel like the lighting and how the shadows, the contrast.
Yeah, that high contrast, moody.
I feel like that's sort of
aerial diffusion.
It's tipping its hat back to the 1930s Dracula.
And I mean, you think of how many times, especially in the last couple years, Conjuring just did a nod to it in their third installment, I think.
Okay,
so it's still getting their acknowledgement for that. So, and then all those shots of Linda Blair with her eyes right in rapid succession around that.
Oh yeah,
use of those contacts and the decrepit makeup on her, it's horrifying.
Well, what do you think too? Given that this was, like we said, nominated for Best Picture. And like I still stand by, I believe it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I would agree.
Why is it that horror doesn't get the nod when it comes to the Academy Awards? Like, is it?
Well, I think
is it more that like people like look at it now, or like, did this, for better or worse, hurt and help horror? Did everyone just want to like, oh, we got to be The Exorcist, and it's just still going to this day, and like everyone just keeps trying to push the envelope, but in the wrong way?
Well, no, I think the nature of the Academy has just changed from what it was then. I don't know that any horror films have reached in that direction specifically that at least I can think of. Horror is kind of always just kind of shooting for that core audience of direct fans more so than recognition, at least as I've picked up. Horror in years since then, I mean, it's largely that popcorn slasher audience is often what horror goes after.
Again, I like this too because it shows that you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have a good horror movie that checks all the boxes in terms of the craft.
It was interesting too, like you had movies like the Omen coming out around that time. So
with
I mean,
Gregory
there
Peck?
was a style here that was sought after. I mean, I've grown up watching AMC Horror Fest. I thought Damien as the Antichrist was terrifying. When they peel back his hair and show that little 666 on his head, I'm like, oh, that's the kid, kill it. But yeah, there was a lot of styling sought after for Exorcist in the years following. I think it blazed somewhat of a trail in horror. That's a lot of people are still trying to.
Well, yeah, like I think of it now, and I'm like, man, there's so many horror movies. At least that, and credit, I am not the authority on when it comes to horror, but there are so many that I can just picture, like shots and incidences, moments, characters, storytelling devices that. I'm like, well, The Exorcist was, again, I think did it first. That's why I didn't think I was too far-fetched to say that it's the cornerstone of modern horror, like
absolutely
today. I mean, I just think of things like we've brought up before, like Evil Dead, the possessions and the faces, and I think of stuff like even some of who we'll get into later, even some of John Carpenter's movies. I don't know if he ever pulled anything was influenced or enjoyed Exorcist, but I think it's there also.
I would say he was a fan of it.
I mean, it's definitely art influencing art. You can't deny that.
You and I have said this a couple of times, and I think it's interesting that John Carpenter is one of the most ripped off filmmakers of all time.
Yeah. It's almost like here's your two pillars, if you will, The Exorcist and then John Carpenter.
I love that John's a gamer.
Oh, he's a gamer?
So funny. Yeah, he actually. I'll get into it deeper later on, but he wanted to direct a Dead Space movie.
Ooh, oh man, that'd be awesome.
And he's the whole reason that a Dead Space movie is happening, but the studio didn't want him to do it.
Huh. Well, yeah, we'll table that one for a little bit later.
Topic.
Yeah, I'd be interested to go more into that. But yeah, no, Dead Space, there's another one that I'm like, yeah, I can see it. It's impossible for me, at least, to not look at a lot of horror and at least see, even if it's a thin thread, that harkens back to Exorcist.
Yeah.
And two, how they don't, like you said, that slow burn, they don't right away go for the obvious. They don't right away play up the supernatural element. The supernatural tends to build along with the story.
Yeah, and it's like it's in ways that it gives you the ability to doubt it as it's progressing. There's all the way up until a very certain point in the storyline, there's a justifiable reason for everything, even though in the back of your head you're going, maybe not the case, but all right.
Yeah.
The doctors try and find every possible explanation for what's going on, try and rationalize every little detail. But us, along with Ellen Burstyn's character, we're going, I don't know if I believe that. All her scans come back negative, all her x-rays, and they actually do an MRI scan on her at one point.
Wait, like a real one?
It's like a 70s version of it, but
wait, like they actually performed like on the are we talking, I'm asking now Linda Blair now. I'm saying, like, did they actually do an MRI?
Oh, that I don't.
Oh, okay.
That I don't know.
In the context of the story, you're saying they do an MRI. I gotcha.
Yeah, they put her in an MRI machine in the movie.
Yeah, but like I was like, oh, they actually ran the MRI, because like when you were saying they actually refrigerated the one set, I was like, wait, did they actually?
Yeah. I don't know if they actually. I'd be surprised if they actually gave her an MRI.
That'd be interesting. But here's the question. So like if you shot the bedroom scene again today with Father Marin and Karras, would it be cheaper to just do it how they did, just shoot it in like a giant freezer? Or
it absolutely would not be cheaper.
You don't think?
It's that triangular scale, man. It's the good, cheap, or quick. It's,
what is this pyramid you speak of?
Oh, come on, you've seen this.
No.
We looked at this like 1 billion times in school.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So production can be looked at as a triangle. Put on 3 sides, you put from one angle, you put good. On the top, you put cheap. On the last pillar of the triangle, you put, what did I say? It's good, cheap, and quick.
Yeah.
Pick 2 of them. That's what, so you can have 2.
You can have 2.
It can either be good and quick, it can be cheap and quick, but it won't be good.
It can be cheap and good,
but it won't be quick.
It won't be quick. That's weird, because if it's cheap,
it's it's so true. It's 1,000% true.
It's 1,000% true. Much. You got the.
You can have only 2 of those things.
Good, cheap, or quick. But you don't think like renting out, just be like, hey, I'm from Hollywood, I'm shooting a movie. Can I rent out your meat locker for like a day? And then you just dress the meat locker as a bedroom, and maybe have a couple lamb chops sitting in the background. You don't think that would be the cheaper way to do it? Or that would be, I feel like that would still be cheaper than plugging in the After Effects, don't you think? Or no?
No.
What?
Absolutely not.
What in the hell? Where are you?
It wouldn't be.
How? Explain.
It wouldn't be
me.
better. I'm not saying it's going to be better. I'm going to say it's cheaper to do the visual effects version of that. Yes.
It's cheaper to do the visual effects, because don't you need what the hell am I seeing when I go to the theater and I watch the credits and there's just like a freaking wall of names of visual effects artists?
Well, that's not just adding breath.
No, I know.
Into a bedroom scene.
No, but I'm saying
there's a vast difference between like a full environment reconstruction.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm getting at here. Like I'm getting
that's my point. Is like we're not doing a Marvel movie here. We're just adding breath to people's mouths. Like.
We just talked about getting the actors in the environment, Brian.
Well, I agree with that, but it's not cheaper. You're asking me specifically if it's cheaper. Someone go do this. No, someone don't do this. Don't do this. I don't want to get in trouble. All right, we're gonna have to. I'm just picturing the headline.
No, don't do that. No. But one day we're gonna have to record an episode inside like a freezer, and we'll do a freezer episode. Or if it's really cold outside one night in the winter, we'll do one outside.
Oh, there's absolutely. I'm hoping that we get a cold night outside because I want these damn lantern flies to die.
Oh yeah, they're like everywhere.
The worst. Now that's a horror. That's our horror movie.
Right
Lantern Fly.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah. Don't you need like? Well, I guess so. Like now with like AI tracking, I guess it would definitely be easier. Definitely, or quicker.
I'm not saying in any way is it going to look better, and if those performances had to carry the weight of making that sell, I'm not saying it's going to be better.
See,
I'm saying it would be cheaper.
You're backtracking.
I'm saying it would be, from your specific question, you asked, would it be cheaper? And absolutely, it would be cheaper.
No, that's not what I asked. You're making stuff up now. You're making up lies. No, that is what I asked.
I just pictured it like cut into the clip.
No, but yeah, this is definitely I can't say enough other than masterpiece. if you can watch it.
Yeah.
Definitely watch it, especially around the spoopy season.
It's one of those ones that hits on multiple levels too. Like I said, it's kind of hard to narrow it down to a specific aspect of this that's very successful, but it's a lot of elements. I mean, down to the cinematography, the set work, as we described, building everything inside of a fridge and multiple versions of that bedroom set to achieve multiple effects. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, I remember I'm pretty sure they did a high-rise version of it for the bed and all that.
Yeah. No, some interesting...
So there are multiple effects achieved.
This is almost like a painting sometimes come to life in some of the shots that you see. I'm almost thinking, oh, what's the artist? Hang on. Let me look this up. Damn it. Well, I can't find it, but
of course
it's there. I can't think of who I'm trying to think of.
Give me a reference point.
He did this real famous. Oh man, what the frick is his name? Like he was a cubist, the cubism and all that. Oh, Picasso. Holy crap!
Wow.
I don't know why that.
I can't believe we both couldn't think of that.
I just was like, yeah, what's his name? I couldn't think of it. See, this is what the internet.
You know the guy.
The guy. I mean that in the sense of
Jimmy's
have you ever seen one of his more famous paintings? It's like a huge painting. Guernica. This is for me.
I have to see it.
It's real. It's basically like it's the black and white one. But yes, this is like for me when I watch it, it's like a Picasso painting come to life in a way. I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Just
the
imagery, the way it like everything sometimes feels off. You're like, what the hell's going on? That to me is, I think I've given it as many compliments as I can give.
No, yeah. I think it's one, like I said, I can't like religiously rewatch it.
Yeah. No, it wasn't as good as the other one. Don't.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to top that, especially because I did it on accident. But yeah, no, I think it's one I kind of have to come back to every few years. And I think I get a lot out of it by waiting.
It's almost like you want to time it with like the Olympics.
Yeah, there you go.
It's definitely one of my Olympic films. It doesn't have to be every 4 years, but like you said, every so often
it's a 2 or 3-er for me.
Yeah, you feel that urge to be like, yeah, I want to watch this again.
There is a 4K remaster out for it just this year. So if you're in the cycle for it, I think this is a good year to check it out.
Yeah, definitely a good year. Give this a shot. I would say watch it with someone too. I have to.
There have been several versions of this that have come out. Given that this is probably the last one that had some level of involvement with William Friedkin, I think that this going to end up being the definitive version.
Yeah.
But
now
I mean, there's been several different passes on this for updates from its original version in 73. So it's interesting to have watched it evolve.
Yeah. Now here's one final thing. Obviously, Exorcist Believer coming out. Do you think there'll be a day where someone just says, and maybe they already did it, and I just don't remember, let's just remake The Exorcist? Like 2073 or like 2070, someone says, you know what, I want to remake it for the 100th anniversary.
It was interesting because I think Believer was pitched as a remake, but it was adapted into being a sequel.
All right.
Which is interesting. So it's one of those ones I kind of hope that they don't do that, because they tried that with Poltergeist. I necessarily wasn't a fan of the remake. I know some people were.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot they did that with Poltergeist. Holy hell.
Yeah.
Did we even talk about that?
I don't think that we did. I think I was shying away from it.
I see. That either just shows how bad we are or how bad that one was. Because I totally forgot they did remake it.
But yeah, I think remakes of masterpieces are a fool's endeavor. Now, obviously, there will be instances in which that's proved wrong. You look at John Carpenter.
Yeah,
The Thing is one of the best movies ever made, but it is a remake.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, you got to ask yourself right in the beginning, why are we remaking this? Are we just remaking this for blood money, just because we're bored?
Exactly.
Or do we really want to? Or is
there actual creative value in
remaking
what you're attempting?
Even if it's just, I would say at the simplest level of, I think a lot of people have forgotten this, and we want to reintroduce it and keep the story going for a new generation.
I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, but I say yes. At some point this spoopy season, grab some popcorn, grab some friends,
grab some Exorcist.
Time to exercise. No, all right. Don't laugh. Don't patronize me.
Don't you patronize me.
Don't you do it. Only I can do that to myself.
I love how punny this one got.
Yeah, this one got puns.
Honest to God, I did not mean to do the turning heads one. That was really funny.
It just popped in there.
It tried to think.